All right, another episode of Tri-Lakes Performance DIY. Going to do it a little bit different today. I'm going to do this little intro. I will do some stop motion shooting, and then I'll do some photo galleries kind of explaining what we're doing. It's a little more complex, but what we'll run into, I'm finishing up the frame. I won't say it's a problem, but as you can see here, we have a little bit of a height difference between side to side. Now, that isn't because we messed up. Redoing an old car is like remodeling a house. This thing, it wasn't square. It wasn't true. One of the frame rails on the back spring perch was actually collapsed. And what had happened is water had got underneath of the frame laminations and it froze. That collapsed the frame. So I repaired it on this side, and it made it dimensionally accurate and square. Now the final thing I have to do is cut out a little bit more material. You guys can see a little bit more material over here. And I'm going to fashion a piece of 1/4-inch plate that's going to go on top. And dimensionally, that will make both sides the same. And then I'll work on cosmetics around the edges, and it'll look actually really nice. Now, if you say, oh, that's kind of hokey, I would challenge you, you're working with 50-year-old frames here. Who knows what kind of life this thing led before it came to us. But it was worth saving, and the work is worth doing, because once it's sitting under the chassis, this is going to look fine. Once it's all painted, it's going to be stronger than it ever was. The frame is square, the mounts are true, so aside from this little differential on the spring perches, we're good, and we're only looking at a 1/4-inch height difference from side to side. Now, you might say, what does a 1/4-inch matter? Well, you may never notice it, but I'm running Level Ride's height and pressure system. And with an airbag, we change height with the pressure in the bags. 1/4-inch isn't a lot. It will throw the pressures from side to side off just a tick, and I'm OCD, so it's going to bug me. So as this progresses, look for the photos that we integrate, also the stop motion. We're going to build this up, make our spring perches accurate. We got Peanut here. She is going to provide some valuable assistance, and we're going to get this thing ready for paint. Then we'll move to the front suspension. Next couple videos, we should have the powertrain in, so stay tuned. All right, so I've been doing some plate making. So this is the stuff that really takes time. We're doing this freehand. I don't have a CNC, so we're using the plasma. We're grinding, cleaning up. So this is what we've run into on this particular frame. You can see I've removed this piece of metal. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it is a significant bow to that. And you can also see it is a little bit porous there. You see that hole right there. It's the only spot in the whole frame where I had rust, but it was the same on both sides. And what that did, from within, it changed the external dimensions of the frame. Just on a vertical, it did not affect square, so all the mounting, suspension, everything is where it needs to be. But it was a bit of an issue with ride height and getting the spring perches and everything the way it needs to be. So what I've done is we've cleaned this out on both sides. All right, now on this side, I actually had to cut out a piece of the rail, and I welded in some 3/16 plate. It's not that pretty yet, but I'm actually going to make a top piece to blend that in, so it'll be a smoother transition. Again, a lot stronger than it ever was from the factory. And it's just one of those things that you run into on these older things, but we fixed it. So I'm going to weld in a plate here. All right, so you can see how far down the frame, I can put my finger in there. All right, so we can see how far down that freezing action and rust actually stretched down the frame rail. But that's of no consequence. We have actually girdered all around that piece. This thing's stronger than when it ever left the factory. And then once I have everything ground up and painted, it's going to look fantastic. So keep tuned in, and we'll finish this side plate up, and I'll come back and explain to you how everything wrapped up. Piece of 1/4-inch plate in the drill press. We have our step bit. So we now have our drill press on. So I'm going to center the workpiece on the center punch that I made, which get us right to the center of the hole. And we're going to sink this thing in. Piece fits, everything lines up, our hole's where it needs to be. That is sweet. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to get the welder out, and then I'll show you guys, we'll stitch this in. I'm going to tack it, make sure everything is dimensionally sound, and then from that point forward, we'll start to weld up, and then I'll show you guys, we're going to put just 2 straps up here, and what that's going to do, it's going to take and tie these 2 pieces in. So it's going to tie in our C-notch to our frame rails up into the good pieces. I'm going to go back and trim out the old nasty crusty bits, and then we'll be good to go. We'll move into the front suspension. We finished on this guy. So I was able to get all of this cleaned up. We got everything leveled out. I made some additional perches for the airbag mounts. I added those to both sides. So essentially what we've done is we've bridged the little section of frame there under the cross member that was compromised, and I've added a 1/4-inch plate to cover the gaps. It is stronger than it's ever been. So this works out nice. I actually have my bag mounts lightly bolted in place so we can spec everything up. And this thing, the heights between side to side are perfect. This is exactly what we want. I have it in primer. I can't wait to get this thing to paint. It's going to be awesome. Thank you for your patience today, and stay tuned for our next video.